Welcome to the Storyteller's Moon, a place where every tale carries you into a world of passion, mystery, and unforgettable emotion. This story will pull you in, so find a quiet corner, let your heart open, and step into the journey.
1 hour missing. The first time I noticed it, I was sitting on the edge of my bed with one sock on and the other in my hand. The clock on my phone said 2:11 a.m. I blinked, and the next number I saw was 3:12. The sock was still in my fingers. My heel hadn't moved. The hallway light hummed the same off-key hum it always did. I told myself I'd nod it off, the way you do when sleep knocks from the inside and you pretend you didn't let it in. But sleep leaves evidence, little gentle wreckages. A slouch of the spine, a pillow slightly warmer, the second when you have to figure out which arm you've been lying on because it feels like rope. None of that. I was still upright, still holding gray cotton like a clue from a quiet crime. The apartment was a long shoebox with a window at each end. Outside the back window, the city stacked itself in brick and rust in a few earnest condo balconies where plants tried their best. My building was old enough to have a name that sounded like a threat, the Mayfield, and neighbors who spoke through walls rather than through doors. The radiator clicked. Somewhere above me, Mr. Tate coughed the cough of a man who loved cigars and resented lungs. On the nightstand, the small recorder I used for interviews blinked a red dot. I didn't remember turning it on. When I picked it up, the cold plastic felt like a held breath. I pressed play. White noise. A whisper under it, like air remembering it used to be a voice. Then, as if it had been waiting for me to listen, another sound. Footsteps that didn't sound like they were walking on wood or tile or carpet. They sounded like someone stepped on glass without breaking it. "Return what's borrowed," a voice said through the hiss, so soft I only understood it because my bones leaned toward the words. "Return the hour." I turned the recorder off, like that could do anything about the fact that time had slipped and asked me to notice. On the dresser, beside my keys, a line of street grit curled into a crescent, as if my shoes had kissed a curb and left proof of it. I hadn't left the apartment, I was sure of it. I put on the second sock like that could anchor the world. Then I sat there until the clock said 3:59, and the dark forgot to breathe for a second at 4 o'clock, as it does. And the birds that lived in the eaves made their first half-hearted sound, like a radio turning itself up by accident. In the morning, my cousin Aaron texted, "You up?" which was either a question or a sermon. "Didn't sleep," I sent back. "Lost an hour. Like in traffic," he wrote. Or existential. Like it fell out my pocket, I typed, and hit send before I could decide whether that was funny or sad. I'm a producer for a small podcast out of our neighborhood center, a show called After Hours where we talk to night shift workers. I love the interviews. I love the quiet between them when the city is a different animal. I hate now the way the hour between 2 and 3 has learned my name. On the second night, I prepared. I put my keys in a bowl, my boots under the chair, my phone on the dresser with the camera app open, and pointed toward the door. I texted my best friend, Tiana Cole, and told her not to worry if I sounded ridiculous later. She sent back 3 eyes and a heart and "Stay spiky." Her way of saying "be brave." That always made me smile. At 1:58 a.m., I sat on the bed again. My name is Devin Rhodes. I am 32. My apartment smells faintly of old wood and new detergent. My grandmother is alive. My father is not. My hands shake when I'm angry, but never when I'm scared. I am not going to lose it. I said those things like a spell you cast to pin the map to the table. When the phone clicked to 2 o'clock, the air in the room changed temperature the way it does when a bus opens its doors on a winter night. Not colder, older. The recorder blinked. The radiator stopped clicking like a child told to hush. On the wall, the framed photo of my mother at 19 with her face squared to the camera tilted a degree and then corrected itself, as if the building had sighed and gotten self-conscious. I kept my eyes on the phone. 201, 202. I blinked. 307. The boots were no longer under the chair. The phone cameras showed me 37 minutes of door. At 2:18, the doorknob turned. At 2:19, I walked out. I wore my coat. My scarf was looped once. Not how I tie it, but how my father did. Casual and a little off-center, like he cared, but not too much, because cool was a kind of armor. I moved like someone who knew where they were going. At 3:10, the door opened. I came back in. I walked to the bed and sat. My hands were empty. My boots were dirty. I watched myself sit and look at the phone and blink and curse softly and hit stop and then replay. And the look on my face when I watched me leave was a look I recognized from funerals. It's the look of a person translating the universe into a language they can live in. In the morning, I took the subway to Brighton and 3rd, where the winter sun pretends to help. The platform smelled like old rain and stubborn gum. I took my boots off on a bench and shook them over a paper napkin like a lunatic. What fell out was not dirt. It glittered and kept glittering, even when the light moved away. It looked like ground-up bottle, but when I pinched a bit between my fingers, it felt like ash deciding to be a stone. A woman waiting for the queue watched me with kind eyes, the way older women do when they're deciding whether to intervene. She was dressed for church, even though it was Thursday morning. Hat with a small veil, gloves, coat with good buttons. "Baby," she said, "you don't need to put your feet out in the world like that." "I think the world already got in," I said, and then wished I'd said something lovely and self-contained like in a novel. She nodded like she knew exactly what that meant. "It always does," she said. "Get yourself some salt." "For the boots?" I asked. "For the door," she said. The queue arrived and roared, and she stepped on like she had all the time in it. Tiana works the night shift at the hospital, and during the day, she eats breakfast like a champion of breakfast. I brought coffee and biscuits and told her about the hour. She listened without laughter, without the kind of friend skepticism that hurts because it's care dressed as doubt. Tiana has eyes like a good boundary, warm and not a road you can cross without permission. "You should have called me," she said, ketchuping her eggs like a disrespectful teenager. "I would have stayed on the phone with you the whole time." "I didn't know it would happen again," I said. "I still don't." "Maybe it won't." Tiana raised one eyebrow. The look said, "Okay," in a way that meant no. "There was this lady on the subway," I said, and told her about the hat and the veil and the salt. Tiana tapped the table twice, a little rhythm she did when she liked a thing. "My Nana used to put salt at the threshold whenever we moved to a new apartment," she said. "Say a blessing. leave a white line the broom wouldn't cross, said it kept out the bad and kept in the good. What did it actually do? I asked. Made her feel better, Tiana said. Sometimes that's enough. I brought you something, I said, and pulled the napkin from my pocket. The glittering nut quite ash spread itself thin on the white like writing in a language I didn't know yet. Tiana leaned in. That's not street, she said. That's... She stopped. Doesn't matter. Put it back in the napkin. I don't want whatever vibe that is seasoning my eggs. The joke was small, and I was grateful for it. Humor is a door that keeps you in the room. Okay, she said. Rules. You put salt at the door. You keep the recorder on. You text me at 1:55 to say, here we go. You text me at 3:15 to say, still me. If I don't get the second text, I'm knocking your door down with my huge heart and limited upper body strength. That's only funny because it's true, I said, and she smiled. And if I'm not me when you get there? Tiana's face didn't change. I'll still love you, she said, and I'll still make you coffee. I bought a box of kosher salt from the bodega, and the owner, Mr. Johnson, said, for cooking or for something else? Which made me look up so fast my neck complained. Something else, I said. Then get two, he said. One to use, one in the cabinet for later. It's always later sooner than you think. I took the subway home feeling like the city was doing an impression of itself. The kids on the bench rapped to an invisible beat. A woman in a suit cried quietly, the way people do when tears forget to ask permission. The light strobed on the tile in the tunnel, like someone forgetting to flip a switch. Remembering, forgetting again. At 1:40, I put a thin line of salt across the threshold. It looked like a paper cut turned inside out. I did the same across the windowsill, and a little circle on the nightstand around the recorder because it made me feel like I was helping. At 1:55, I texted Tiana, here we go. At 1:58, I sat on the bed. The radiator clicked, then didn't. The building sighed. The picture of my mother held steady. At 2 o'clock, a sound like someone drumming fingers along a row of glasses moved through the walls and settled behind me. It was not in the room. It was in the room's reflection. I kept my eyes open. 2:01, 2:02, 2:03. A soft scrape at the door, the kind of sound wood makes when it wants to remember being a tree. A voice. Devin. It was my father's voice. Not exactly. My father's voice, the way a photograph is your face and not your face. An echo that gets your bones right and your skin wrong. I'm not opening, I said, and surprised myself by not crying. Devin, the voice said again. You need to return what you borrowed. I didn't borrow anything, I said. I rent. Nothing in my life is borrowed because nobody gave it to me. The laugh that followed was gentle and awful. You all borrow the hour, it said. Every fall, you steal 60 minutes and pretend God told you it was fine. It's daylight saving, I said. Because arguing is how I keep from going under. It's a clock trick, not theft. Tricks count, it said. You stole an hour and then took another. This city is full of people who think they are owed more minutes than the rest. The hour comes to even. The clock said 2:12. I looked at the salt line at the door. In the low light, it should have looked white. It looked pale green, the color of bottles pulled from riverbeds. The color of glass when it thinks it remembers the sun. "Return what's borrowed," the voice said. And then, softer, like a blessing offered as a dare, "Or we will come inside you." The clock said 3:12. There were fingerprints in the salt. A text from Tiana. "Still me." I stared at my hands for a full minute, as if they might tell me where they'd been. "Yeah," I typed. "Still me." And a half second after I hit send, I was certain I had lied. Friday afternoon, I brought the recorder and the salt and the napkin to my grandmother's building, where portraits of grandchildren hung in stern rows like a family jury. Grandma Lenora had made tea that tasted like church and put out pecan sandies because she believed sweetness could help the world approach sense. Her apartment smelled like lemon cleaner and old books and the last thing that had burned in the kitchen 27 years ago and never quite left. She listened to the tape, eyes half closed, head tilted like she was standing under rain. When it finished, she didn't speak for a long time. "We used to keep track," she said finally. "Time. Proper time. We'd write it down when it went missing, and we'd find what we'd done wrong, who we were rude to, what we forgot to thank. If the lost time got smart, we'd put a mirror outside, a mirror inside, and a mirror at the table, and we'd sit. And if it got mean," she tapped the recorder, "we'd leave a bowl of water on the step and name the hour that it took. Naming gives a thing a shape." I had about 14 questions fighting to be first. "What happens when you name it?" "You either shame it or invite it," she said. "Depends how you say the name." "Is this why you always tell us to be home before midnight?" I asked. "That's for vampires," she said, and smiled. "This is older. This is the bookkeeping of the world." I told her about daylight saving time, about fall back, about the whole country agreeing to pretend an hour moved like furniture. She said. "My mother hated that. Said you shouldn't lie to the clock. It keeps better records than you do." "Graham," I said, "what is it?" She poured more tea. The sound was indecently reassuring. "When a town borrows," she said, "something comes to collect. Sometimes it's a house that doesn't hold heat. Sometimes it's a river that is never satisfied. Sometimes it's a voice." She took my hands in hers. "Sometimes it looks like the person you love, because you will listen to them when you wouldn't listen to yourself." "I didn't borrow," I said. But the words were smaller than they should have been. She patted my knuckles. "Then it isn't about you. It's about where you are." "Brooklyn knows the hour," I said, half joking, half to hear it. "The city owes many hours," she said. "But you can only pay the one that knocks on your door." "How?" I asked. "How do I pay it?" She looked at the salt, at the napkin, at the recorder. "You make a record of the missing. You make it a thing you can hold. Then you take it where time stops moving, and you leave it there." "Where time stops moving," I repeated. Like maybe if I said it the right way, the location would pretend to be obvious. "The places where clocks are wrong on purpose," she said. "Hospitals, funeral homes, courtrooms, train tunnels where the light doesn't reach. Sit with it there. Say you're sorry. Not because you did it, but because someone did." She raised an eyebrow at me. "And be funny about it if you can. Humor lets fear let go." Grandma, I said, this is the first time a haunting came with homework. You're lucky, she said. Learning is an exit. Saturday night, 2 a.m. The Q tunnel at DeKalb yawns like a mouth that's forgotten what it's for. I stood behind the yellow line with my coat zipped and the recorder warm in my pocket. The tunnel breathes differently at night. The air doesn't have to make room for so many hearts. Tiana came anyway, even though she had to be at work at 6. I'm not leaving you to get adjusted by some metaphysical accounting department, she said. She handed me a bag of gummy bears with the grave solemnity of a doctor handing over a syringe. If we die, she added, I'm haunting whoever invented daylight saving. I'm putting their clocks in different time zones every morning. That's one of your 2 jokes, I said. I think I get 3, she said, but her eyes were serious. We sat on the cold bench and listened to the way the tunnel held sound and then forgot it. At 2:07, a shape moved down the tracks without lights. I've lived here long enough to know the difference between train and not train. This was not train. It was absence in motion. Don't look at it, Tiana said, and I didn't ask how she knew. The recorder clicked in my pocket. I took it out and put it on the bench between us. If this is about debt, I said into the dark, we're here to make a payment. The not train stopped in front of us, the way a thought stops in your throat. The platform remained empty. The shadow of the not train fell over us anyway. A voice came from the tunnel. It was not my father's this time. It was a voice I did not know and did know, the way you recognize the arithmetic in any song. Ticket, it said. Payment, I corrected, because I wanted it to know I was paying attention. Ticket, it said again, and now I heard the word under the word, hour. It wanted proof of the hour it had taken. It wanted to be named. I opened the napkin. The glittering ash stone, the salt we'd sprinkled on the edges, the recorder, its little screen a pale eye. The hour of 2:12 to 3:12, I said. The hour you took from me. I'm not returning borrowed time. I'm admitting the city borrows too much. I'm sorry. Not because I did it, but because I am here and I hear you. Tiana leaned toward the tunnel. We're sorry, she said. Not because we like you, but because we want to sleep. A flutter through the air like 100 pages turning at once. The not train exhaled something colder than the tunnel had any right to hold. Ticket, the voice said again. But now I understood that it meant witness. I held up the recorder. Listen, I said. I pressed play. Footsteps on unbroken glass, my father's almost voice. Return what's borrowed, the clock's soft digital click as it gave up on 2:13 and became a 3:12. The not train inhaled. The sound cut off mid-echo. My breath made a small cloud, like a confession. Payment accepted, the voice said. And there was something like relief in it, or hunger eased temporarily, which is the same thing if you're built of winter. The shadow lifted. A rush of air like a train passed and then didn't. The platform smelled briefly of rain on hot concrete, though there was no rain and no heat. Devin, it said then, as an afterthought that wasn't. There is more owed. What more? I asked, because dragging answers out by their hair is the only success I trust. 60 minutes is never 60 minutes, it said. The hour adds up across people, across years. Returns must match interest. Interest, Tiana said, and shook her head very slowly. Even ghosts are capitalists. That's two, I said. The not train didn't leave. It leaned, like a man at a bar deciding how far to push his luck. You can give back other minutes, it said, almost coaxing. Regret, for instance. Complaints held too long. Whole afternoons of scrolling when you could have said someone's name. I looked at Tiana. She looked at me. I thought of Aaron and his all-caps prayers. I thought of my grandmother naming the hour so it couldn't shape-shift. I thought of my father tying my scarf slack because tight things frightened him after the hospital began to smell like a map of his body leaving. I don't have those minutes to give, I said. They're gone. This is what I can give. The record and the sorry. You can have this hour. You can leave the rest. The shadow made a sound like disappointment the size of a building. Then it made no sound at all. At 3:12, the platform lights warmed by a degree, and somewhere a clock down the line decided to resume being wrong in the ordinary way. We went home. We slept. For the first night in a week, I didn't lose anything. Sunday afternoon, a flyer appeared on our building's corkboard. Missing, Desmond Avery. Last seen August 13th. The photo had the kind of smile that makes you want to check your posture. I remembered the news clip I'd half heard in the hotel months ago on the road, about a man gone between a train and a block. The number at the bottom was a cousin's. The tape edge of the flyer had bubbles where someone's nervous thumb had pushed too hard. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Tiana said when I texted her a picture. That this hour isn't just mine, I said. That this hour is acting like it's a landlord, she replied, collecting late fees. We paid, I wrote. For you, she wrote. What about everyone else? I do not have a hero complex. I have a stubborn streak and a microphone. I brought the recorder to the corner where Desmond was last seen. The lamppost there was wrapped in memorial, candles, a pair of sneakers, a small bottle of whiskey someone had set out, like an offering to a god neither of us believed in. The sidewalk had a darker patch, not blood. Gum, probably. The city's skin never healing smooth. I pressed record. I said Desmond's name. I said the date. I said the hour we gave back in the tunnel like it was an IOU that needed witnesses. People walked by. They look at a man holding a recorder like he is either doing something important or avoiding doing anything at all. An older man with a shopping cart said, "You a reporter?" And when I said sort of, he nodded like that counted as penance. Did you know him? I asked. Everybody knows everybody, he said. Or they don't, and then they pretend they did after. He pointed his chin toward the candles. That boy's time got funny. He'd be sitting at Domino's, and then he'd look up and he'd say, "What day is it?" And we'd say the same day it was when you sat down, and he'd say, "No, it ain't." The man shrugged. Then one night he went to smoke and didn't come back. Time took him like a bus. His cart held 2 umbrellas, a radio with no antenna, and a stack of calendars from 2012. I wanted to give him money and did not, because it felt like buying something unnamed. What do people do, I asked, when time gets funny? They look for a clock that isn't lying, he said. Don't usually find one. That night, 2 a.m., the missing hour didn't come for me. I fell asleep like a falling thing and woke like a person. Morning moved in its slow, kind way. Outside my window, the light arrived the color of cold milk. At noon, my phone rang. A blocked number. "You keep records," a voice said. "Yes," I said, because I had made the mistake of telling that to the internet more than once. "There's a woman on my floor," the voice said. "She works nights. Her clock's been wrong a week. Last night she tried to fix it and the hands cut her." "What's your name?" I asked. "Keisha Adair," she said. "I deliver wings. My aunt used to work at the Harrogate Inn. If I tell you the address, will you come talk to her?" Keisha lived 5 stops away in a building that smelled like someone had attempted incense and gotten grief. The hallway had carpet that wanted to be nicer than it was. Her door had a scratch across it at the height of a tall person's fear. She was young, younger than me by a decade, with a frankness I recognize in people who carry heavy bags for tips. The apartment had good plants and a bad ceiling crack. In the kitchen, the clock hung on the wall, an old one with a glass dome and brass hands. The glass was smeared, as if someone had pressed their palm against it from the inside. Keisha's neighbor, Maya, sat at the table with a bandage wrapped around her right hand. She looked sallow in the way of people who don't sleep because they're avoiding a dream. The hour hand was bent slightly wrong, like a finger set poorly after a break. "I know it sounds foolish," Maya said, "but the hours feel like they're stacked wrong. I keep getting to work and feeling like I already finished my shift, and the manager acts like I didn't. I come home and the time on the stove is not the time on my phone. I try to move the hands and it moves me. Let me try something," I said, not certain whether I was going to look brave or stupid, which is a Venn diagram I live inside. I set the recorder on the table. I put the napkin with the knot ash beside it. I poured a circle of salt around both. Then I sat back. "This is a record," I said to the clock. "You can come make your case if you want to be named." The second hand slowed. I don't mean it looked slower. I mean each tiny step took twice as long, as if hesitation had become a rule. The glass fogged, not from breath, from old weather. "Return what's borrowed," a voice said, muffled by glass and years. "I can't return other people's hours," I said, "but I can listen to them." The hands twitched. The second hand went backward 1 tick and then realized that wasn't allowed and corrected itself. Embarrassed clock behavior, if that's a thing. The hour hand trembled and made the smallest cut in the reflection of the room. Keisha stepped forward, but I shook my head. "You have to let a haunting finish its sentence, or it'll repeat itself for the rest of your life." "Maya's hour," it said. "Maya borrowed the hour when the state told her to. She took an extra 60 minutes of sleep. She never paid it back." "Then bill the state," Keisha said, heat rising in her voice. "Why you harassing a woman who works nights? Go knock on Congress." The laugh behind the glass was bigger than the room. "Power pays in other currencies," it said. "Minutes are collected where they will be missed." I hate when an awful thing is also right. "What's the interest?" I asked. Because if you ask a predator what it eats, it tells you what it can't stop wanting. "Regret," it said. "Guilt, good jokes. People who keep good records, children who are almost asleep, men who think they can still fix it. All the things that make an hour feel longer." I breathed and then remembered to breathe again. We gave one back in the tunnel, I said. We named it, and the city felt lighter for a second. Can we do that here? The clock's hands stilled. Maybe, it said, and the words scraped along the inside of the glass like a coin dragged across a table. But you must be still with us while we take it. Us, I repeated, counting voices without meaning to. How many of you are there? As many as there are minutes, it said, and as many as there are losses. I looked at Tiana. Tiana looked at me. She shook her head. It wants to hold you while it takes it, she said. No. Keisha stood behind her neighbor, a hand on Maya's unbandaged shoulder. What if it holds me? She said. What if it uses me to take hers? I'm stubborn. I can be a bridge if I have to. No, I said too fast. The clock hummed like an old refrigerator. There are other ways, it said, but you will not like them. Show me, I said. It did. It showed me my father's face the week before the ward closed, the way he looked at me like a man reading with his finger on the line. It showed me the park where Tiana had her first panic attack in 8th grade, the bench that still notices. It showed me Aaron at 14, arranging dominoes in quiet rows while the house behind him burned with adults yelling about money. It showed me my grandmother at 19, stepping off a bus into a city that didn't want her, and how she whispered, "Time belongs to God," not to men, into her coat pocket like a note she might need later. Stop, I said, and wasn't certain whether I asked the clock or the past. Payment, it said. Name it. Bring it. Sit with it. I touched the glass. It was not cold. It was the temperature of rooms you don't want to enter but must. That weird neutrality that means a decision was made long before you arrived. We'll take it to the tunnel, I said. We'll give it back. 3 days, the clock said, and I heard the number crash around the room. 3 nights. We come at 2:12. We leave at 3:12. If you do not bring payment by the 3rd, we take the hour we want. Keisha swore softly, the way you do when someone cheats at a game you love. Maya wrapped her bandaged hand in a dish towel and looked at me like she already knew I'd say yes. I'll bring it, I said. The clock relaxed. The second hand hopped twice like a child, eager to be useful. Somewhere in someone else's apartment, a baby laughed. Maya exhaled like a patient being told you have options, not you have a miracle. For 3 nights, we sat with the hour. Not just me, Tiana and Keisha and Maya and Aaron, and then, on the 3rd night, Grandma Lenora too, because she called and said, "Don't you dare do this without me." And I remembered being 8 and watching her carry grief down a hallway like it was a basket of laundry. Difficult, ordinary, done. We sat on the floor with a recorder and the salt and the clock wrapped in a blanket like a pet with a winter jacket. We told the hour where it had hurt us. We counted, not the way accountants do, but the way people do at bedsides. We named the minutes we didn't earn. We apologized for the minutes we took anyway. We told it jokes 3 times because Grandma said it like that, and because the room needed to know it was hosted by human beings and not by victims. For the record, Tiana's tiny rant about daylight saving earned a reluctant snort from Aaron, which the hour did not know how to catalog. The first night, at 2:12, the voice was a child's, and then a woman's, and then nobody's you could invite to dinner. It said payment, and we said, "We're working on it." The second night, at 2:12, it said, "Name it," and we said Maya's hour and Desmond's hour, and the hour my mother wanted back on the day my father died because she wanted to say one more small, stupid thing. The third night, at 2:12, it arrived in the walls like rain in the bones of a house. It smelled like a basement remembering a flood. "We have it," I said. I held up the napkin with the glitter ash and the salt and the recorder wrapped together like a sandwich eaten by a god. We made a ledger. We wrote down what we could. We brought witnesses. "Bring it," the hour said. And I hated how relieved I was to be given an errand by something that had no face. We went to the tunnel. All of us. That is a bad idea. That is the kind of thing you look back on and think, we should have made a plan that didn't involve wandering into the throat of the city holding an evil lunch. But there we were. Grandma in her best coat, Aaron with his shoulders squared like a kid daring a bully, Keisha with a hoodie over her hair, Maya with her hand bandage replaced and her jaw set, Tiana with her eyes saying okay and meaning no and coming anyway. The not train arrived without arrival. The shadow fell over us. The lights didn't dim. They were simply not relevant. "Payment," it said. I stepped forward. "Ledger," I said. I opened the napkin. The glitter knot ash moved like something alive in a jar, which, I realized, was not strictly a metaphor. The recorder blinked. Aaron took a breath and held it like a note. "Ticket," it said. I held up the recorder. I pressed play. The tunnel filled with our voices, and with the voices we had borrowed. My father and the thing that wasn't him. The clock with its glass hollowness, the child that started and the woman that finished. And underneath it, the sound like feet on glass without breaking. The sound I had decided belonged to the hour moving through the world carrying a jar full of names. "Accepted," it said. The wind shifted. The not train inhaled and did not exhale. For a second, less than that, I saw a figure beside me on the platform. He wore a work jacket. He had a beard that needed trimming and a look like anyway on his face. He looked like the missing man from the poster. He looked past me, toward a place that didn't exist yet, the way tired people look toward the door of a bus and try to make hope match the route map. "Desmond," Keisha said, but softly, like a prayer you are not sure you should say aloud. He glanced once, a flick of attention like a coin tossed to see which side it lands on. And then he wasn't there. Which is not the same as saying he wasn't anywhere. The not train's shadow lifted. The tunnel went back to being a bad painting of itself. The platform light hummed, relieved to be included again. "It's done?" Tiana asked. "Mostly," the voice said, and then left in the way rooms empty when you look away. We went home in silence. The kind that isn't awkward because you've agreed to carry a box together, and you need your words for the stairs. I slept. For the first time, I dreamed not of the hour but of water. A river that moved like a choir, wide and sure, taking its time on purpose. I woke with the taste of iron in my mouth and the feeling in my hands of having held something fragile and heavy and in need of being set down carefully. The day moved. The city attempted honesty. I answered emails. I played a voicemail from my mother that was just her sighing and then saying, "I forgot why I called. Call me back and I'll remember I called her back." She did. At 3:12 p.m., my phone vibrated against the table with a kind of insistence that has no business belonging to a piece of glass. A calendar alert I did not set slid across the screen. 1 hour missing, 4 to 5. This is not how we do this, I told the phone, because I was alone and the time for pretending otherwise had clearly passed. At 4 o'clock, the light in the room bent, not dimmed. Tilted, the street outside the window lost focus. The radiator exhaled. I felt the hour arrive, not as a theft, but as an adjustment. Return what's borrowed, it said without malice. Not a threat. A bookkeeping entry read aloud. I don't have another ledger, I said. We gave what we had. You have yourself, it said. I hate metaphors that become instructions. Take it then, I said. Take it from me. You have to hold still, it said. You have to mean it. I sat. I placed my hands palms up on my knees because Grandma always says, that's how you let blessing land. I closed my eyes. The first thing I felt was resistance. My body is very attached to being mine. The second was grief, hot in the chest, but without object, the way babies cry when night is too big. The third was a laugh catching in my throat and choosing not to be born. The fourth was a memory of my father holding the steering wheel with both hands the day he taught me to drive, pretending the car was a whale and we were trying not to scare it. And me laughing and him laughing, and time in that moment having the decency to walk at the pace of a person going down a hallway to a room they want to enter. I let the hour take those things, not because I wanted to lose them, because I wanted to stop losing others. When I opened my eyes, the light had resumed its usual angle. The clock said 5:01. My phone did not argue. I felt emptied out in a benevolent way, like a room after guests when the chairs are pushed back and you can see the floor again. I felt older, but not in the sad way, in the way of people who have done a chore that needed doing and can now sit at the table. My mother called. "Baby," she said, and then just breathed, both of us listening to the sound of time being ordinary. I remembered why I called, she said and laughed. You want some beans? I made too many. Yes, I said, without jokes, without caveats. Yes, Ma. The missing posters didn't come down. That is not the kind of story this is. The hour did not return everything like a waitress balancing a tray. But on Wednesday, the cousin whose number was on the flyer called Keisha and said, his phone pinged twice near the river, and somebody saw him by the lot, and I think he's not dead. And Keisha, who is good with hearts, told her to breathe, and then called me and didn't say anything, just let the air say we had done a thing, and the world had flinched. In the hospital, Tiana changed shifts to days. She said the night hours could have someone else. She'd spent enough currency in them. She kept one joke back for emergencies. I'm saving it, she said. Interest. Grandma made me light a white candle and let it burn until it burned out. She made me sweep the salt into a jar and set it under the sink. Keep it there, she said. You might not need it. But the hour likes a house where it knows the rules. Aaron sent me a photo of dominoes set in the shape of a clock with 2 and 3 not where they belonged. Then pushed an end and let the whole thing fall. We good, he texted. And I sent back a heart because sometimes you exhaust all your sentences and you still want to say everything. Maya moved the clock into a closet. She said it could keep time in there if it wanted to, and if not, it could think about what it had done. The cut on her hand healed as if the skin remembered its shape. Keisha delivered wings and laughed at exactly one thing a day on purpose. At night, I slept. not perfectly. Nobody does. But sleep returned to being a room I could enter without keys. On the last Sunday of October, when we are told to fall back, I stood at my window and watched the city shrug. Clocks are coercions. We pretend they are promises. I had 2 pots on the stove and a playlist on low and my phone on the counter, just in case it decided to announce a new policy. At 1:59 a.m., the numbers turned to 1 a.m. again. Somewhere, a cheer went up because people love a gift, even when it is stolen. Somewhere else, a sigh because night got longer and some kinds of work count the minutes. I felt it then. A hand on my shoulder. Not a person's. The sensation of being acknowledged by the mathematics of the world. "Return what's borrowed," it said softly, like a teacher who cares if you learn. I did, I said. I will again. "Keep good records," it said. I will, I said. "Laugh sometimes," it said, almost embarrassed, as if discovering a preference was unpleasant work. "I do," I said, "twice a day." The hand lifted, the light moved, the radiator clicked. I stirred the beans and thought of my father's scarf knot and my grandmother's coat and the way Tiana stood in the tunnel with her shoulder against mine like we were the same height, which we are not. But courage is a great equalizer. Before bed, I put a thin line of salt at the door, because tradition is also a door. I set the recorder on the nightstand. I wrote the date in a notebook my mother gave me, and under it, 1 hour returned. Then I added, because the hour had asked me to, and I am, unfortunately, teachable. I laughed twice. I turned off the lamp. The room accepted the dark and introduced us like we hadn't met. The building settled. The city breathed. Somewhere below, a car stereo made a decision it would regret. I closed my eyes and waited for the warm, ordinary wave of sleep to climb the bed and take me with it. Just before it did, a knocking came from the far corner of the room. Not the door. The corner where the ceiling meets 2 walls and nobody reaches. 3 soft taps. A pause. 3 more. I didn't move. Terror is a familiar visitor. I let it stand in the corner like an uncle who doesn't know when to leave. "Not tonight," I said. Not loud, not brave. Simply correct. We balanced the books. From the corner, something that might have been a shrug and might have been the building groaning in its sleep. Then a sound like pages turning far away. Then nothing. The kind of nothing that is the world behaving and calling it mercy. In the morning, the salt line was unbroken. The clock had obeyed the fiction. Outside, the city was gray, as an old sweatshirt and twice as forgiving. I made coffee and texted Tiana and called my mother and sent Aaron a photo of my socks matching right heel, left heel, both feet fully here. We keep what we can. We return what we must. We name the missing. We learn to make records, and we learn where to bring them. If we are lucky, we laugh twice a day. If we are very lucky, the hour knocks less often. And if it knocks again, we tell it. We're home, and see whether that counts.
Thank you for listening to The Storyteller's Moon. If this story touched you, scared you, or kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps the stories alive, and I can't wait to share the next one with you under the moonlight. Until then, may your nights be safe and your dreams unforgettable.